Hi everybody and welcome to Nikki Chanel's YouTube channel. It is Nikki Chanel here, and today's topic is going to be related to my first ever video, which I'm thankful for the response rate on that video already. It's already kind of hit what I was hoping it would be at the beginning stages, especially with 0 followers basically. And so today's video is going to be how different groups of people reacted to me saying that I wanted to be a girl. And we're going to talk about 3 main groups. We're going to talk about how my friends reacted to my transition, how my job reacted to my transition, and how my parents reacted to my transition. I'm hoping that by telling my story, any of you trans friends out there can kind of follow along and kind of figure out like the similarities and the differences, and also see if this helps you in being who you want to be. And because that's the whole reason we transition, is so we can be how we want to be. So let's get started, babes. So honestly, you could kind of put my friends into 2 categories. Friends that I made pre-college and friends that I made after college. Because pre-college, I was this quiet kid. I was super quiet. I was very boyish. I was into video games, still am into video games. And a lot of the friends I made were very quiet. We were just kind of like normal boys, really. I didn't have any like female friends growing up because I was too afraid to talk to girls about, makeup and everything like that. And I didn't want to have a relationship with them and, young and naive shit like that. And so my friends pre-college, they were always really nice, but they just didn't understand why I wanted to be a girl. And so I lost a lot of them as I went into college, because during college I started to really dress a lot. I started wearing makeup a little bit more out in the open. My jeans got skinny, and I started doing things to look like a girl. And then, with HRT happened, I haven't talked to a lot of my high school friends in forever, really. And I had people to talk to in college. And there was a couple of friends that I really made in college. But for the most part, a lot of the friends that I made in college, they just kind of, we all went our separate ways after, and we went from there. But there's one story that is probably the perfect example of how I was pre-transition. So many of you follow my Instagram, and honestly, I looked like a boy in my pre-transition photos. There was no twinkiness, there was no kind of feminineness. No, I looked like a boy. And there was one girl that I talked to. It was in Com 101, and I hope she likes this video and sees it, because I always talk about this video and she always remembers it too. But there was this girl that was in college. She was beautiful. Oh my God, she was gorgeous. She's goals. I looked at her and was like, I want to be you, I want to be you, I want to be you. And she was beautiful, but because of the fact that she was beautiful, she had a guard up. And so when I started talking to her, I would just be like, oh, hi there, things like that. And she was like, okay, whatever. But as I got talking to her, she thought I was hitting on her. She thought I was trying to get in her pants. She thought I was trying to hit on her, and it was just, blind luck that we ended up in the same group all the time. But there was one day that I was just talking to her, and she pulled out a lipstick from her bag to touch up her lipstick. And I'm like, oh, what brand of lipstick is that? Well, how do you apply that? What do you do? Do you put it down? And she's like, whoa, I didn't expect this. And then I showed her some of my drag photos, and she's like, okay, yeah, Miles doesn't want to get in my pants. Miles wants to be me. And then after that, I started talking to her a lot about, what I've been feeling for years. And I think that girl is super awesome, and she still is super cool. And she followed me. She's been following me on Instagram, and she finally asked me, are you transitioning? I'm like, yeah, I'm transitioning. She's like, oh, good for you. I knew when we were in college that this was a big thing for you. So honestly, I'm gonna tell you right now is that I've made a lot of friends being the real me, and these are truer friendships than I've ever had. And these are wonderful moments in my life right now. So honestly, my friends never had any issues with me being a girl. Now, let's talk about how my job reacted to transition. Now, I'm pretty sure from all of you, if you've watched my first video, there's going to be a link in in the description. From that video, I knew I wanted to be a girl about 6 years old, and I knew I wanted to transition by age 21, and I finally transitioned at 25. But there was about like 7 years there where I worked jobs as an identified male, where there was no issue with transition. There was no like pronoun thing. It was like, okay, you're a dude. I'm gonna call you boy. I'm gonna call you he, and all that stuff. And that was how a lot of it went. So I was definitely a closeted transsexual to a lot of people that I worked with. They all just thought I was a guy. I think a couple of them knew that I was into men, but there was never like a thing of like, oh, you want to be a girl? That was never like front and center like it is nowadays. And so with a lot of those friends that I made during work, there was really like two categories. There was the people that were super accepting, that I would show them pictures of me dressed up and I would kind of talk to them more in like a girly manner and all that. And then there was like the yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. There was the bosses, and then there was the employees. A lot of the employees I always got along with, but like the bosses, I never told them. I only told like 1 or 2 of my bosses, and I like never wore makeup, except when I worked at the Macy's sales floor. That's when I did wear makeup a couple of times, but it was like, you know, boy makeup. But it was mostly just to show off to my friends who worked in the makeup counters, because I loved every single one of them. I'm still pretty good friends with a couple of them too. And honestly, my work was kind of that way. And then when I started to transition, I lost my job in like the middle of COVID, just because of COVID bullshit. And so I got my current job that I still work at right now, and maybe will work at for the foreseeable future. I basically decided to work there because I'm like, they're a large multi-state company. They're one of the biggest companies in the world, actually. And basically they don't give a shit if you're transgender. As long as you come in, clock in, and do your job, that's really all that matters. And then, you know, after working there for about 2.5 years, I realized that they also had LGBT health benefits, that they have transitional surgery benefits. And so that's like one of the main reasons I keep it, because they're gonna pay for these things. And so like, that's why I keep that. So honestly, my work nowadays, especially with how I've gotten so femme over the last 3 years, a lot of them I've talked to about transition. Like they've come up to me and they've talked to me like, oh, okay, you know, what are your pronouns? I'm like, I don't really give a shit. I'm here to do a job. I'm not here to be a martyr for the cause. That's not my goal. And a lot of them respect that kind of decision on me. I'm like, the main thing I tell them is that like, I don't push the pronoun thing at work, because that gets into political statements and I am not going to get political. I am simply there to do a job and clock in, clock out. I don't make enough money from that job to be a political like rabble rouser. So I'm like, whatever, who cares? I don't give a shit when I've been called. I've been called sir for 24 years of my life. It's not gonna change in a matter of 3 years. It may change in like 2 years. It may change when I get my chest done, but it's not going to change like tomorrow. It's something that you work towards. As you pass better and better and better, their perceptions of you will change. And that's what I've told most of them, is that if you feel that I should be called she based off of your definition of she, call me she. If you feel like I should be called he based off of your definition of he, call me he. I don't give a shit. It's mostly because I go there for a paycheck and that's it. So honestly, work was never an issue for me. Now let's talk about the big one. Let's talk about how my family reacted to transition. So I have a sister, I have a mother, and I have a father. My sister is 10 years older than me. My mother and father are almost 70 years old. They were born into, you know, that male-female society. That's what they were born into. There was no trans, like there was really not even gay people around. There was them, but they were, you know, on the fringes of it. And so when I started getting into my sister's closet at an early age, and you know, transitioning had come around at that point, it was kind of like a word that was used in vocabulary in the early 2000s. But honestly, my parents didn't react very kindly for me getting into my sister's makeup. Like I think they said, quote unquote, that every once some of her eyeshadow palettes, and I'm like, yeah, that's probably true, because I used to just like put that stuff on me everywhere basically. And they And I know this is out of love because my parents do love me and I never felt unloved by them ever, but they did not want me to be a girl. Like, my mother told me that she still wishes I was a boy. And like, she's like, I birthed a son, so I will not call you she. And I'm like, you know what? I've just accepted it by this point. Because that was like one of the biggest contentions that I had, was I lived under their roof. I lived in their house. And so I couldn't be fully me. Like, they allowed me to dress, but behind closed doors when they weren't there, basically. And they're like, don't go out in public. Well, I did go out in public a couple times and it was super fun and all that stuff. But they did not want me to be a girl. They still don't want me to be a girl. And I know it's out of love and like out of a fear of like what could happen to me, you know, if the haters found me and all that stuff. And I understand that. But with me is that I wanted to be a girl. I figured that out at like 6 years old, and I decided to transition by age 21. And so when I started to transition, I managed to hide the fact that I was on HRT, literally turning into a girl in front of their eyes, for almost a year and a half, until my mom hunted me down at work one day. Not hunted me down, she was just there doing stuff. But she came up to me one day, and I think it was like July 27th or something like that. And she's like, hey, why do you have boobs? I'm like, okay. And I went home and I told her everything. I told her that, you know, I'd gotten Botox, I'd gotten lip filler. I had been on HRT for a year and a half. That was literally turning me into a girl. I told her that I was sterile, that I couldn't have children anymore because of HRT. I told her that, you know, I managed to grow out my hair. I had hair appointments, and like, oh my God, when I would come home from my hair appointments and my hair was like super feminine, there was one day that they like freaked the fuck out on me. I was like, why do you have that hair? And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's hair, who cares? Why do you have that hair? Blah, 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 blah. And they just really can't accept that I'm a she. They're okay with it now that I moved out and I'm not near them at all times and I can really be who I want to be in my apartment. But they are never going to call me she. They're never going to call me Nicole. I am Miles. I am he, him to them. And that's all that will ever be. And you know what? I just accepted it by this point because you can't teach a dog new tricks. And so, babes, what I want you to get out of this is that different groups of people react to you differently. My friends, a lot of my friends are around the same age group as me, so like 10 years or so difference. So they grew up in a society where transgender was talked about, where LGBT was talked about, where there was no issue with it. There is issues, but you know, it's slowly getting better. My work, as long as I come in and clock in and do my job, they don't care what I look like. So work was always easy for me. Then my family, well, my parents are just conservative. My family is, you know, red leaning, and so it's a lot harder for them to understand why I wanted to be a girl. You know, my parents are older, my sister was raised in that same generational world that I was raised in. We just think a little bit differently. It's not to say that I don't like them. I love them to death. Just they'll slowly come around. And so what I'm saying is that if you're gonna be you, be prepared to be reacted upon by different people, because transgender, it's kind of a thing when you've known somebody for years and then all of a sudden in the matter of 3 years they're a totally different looking person. But again, I am not different. I am Nicole and I am Miles. I am the same person, but people think of it as two different people. And so have a wonderful day, babes.